that's just so exciting, planting a seed, watering it, nurturing it, and watching it come alive. And that's what running a company, that's what a business is like.
Hey, you're listening to the Friends in Austin podcast. I'm your host, Justin Talent, and every week I bring you the stories of the people of Austin. Thank you for listening. Welcome back to Friends in Austin. Today, my guest is Renée Rouleau, and she has a skincare company. And I don't know if that's the best way to describe it, actually, or if you define it as that, but I mean, I would say probably, right? Okay. Do you want to give us an introduction of what the business is? What are the main products? And we can start there.
Yeah. So, Renée Rouleau Skincare is my company. We just celebrated 25 years. We are Austin-based now. We were in Dallas for 19 years. But I started my company in Dallas. I was a practicing esthetician, so a facialist giving skin treatments. My grandmother was a hairstylist, and so she owned her own hair salon back in the 60s and 70s, and so I grew up in a beauty environment. And when it came time to figure out what I wanted to be when I grew up, I knew college wasn't my path, and I was always a beauty junkie, and my mom recommended that I go to school and pursue beauty. And so I became an esthetician, and I actually started my career in Boston. I was living there, and then relocated to Dallas and started my company. And I started with a skincare spa where we were doing skin treatments, and I employed estheticians. And then I started creating a skincare line to be able to sell to my clients, and that continued to grow. And then in 1999, my brother's a web developer, and we launched e-commerce in 1999. So we've been, shipping products since 99 and now ship all over the world. I ended up, continuing developing the product line. E-commerce was continuing to grow. I eventually opened up a second skincare spa in Dallas, and had that for many years. And now fast forward, as of about coming up on, I think 3 years, I'm now no longer have the skincare spas, the retail locations.
I was going to ask you about that. So is it trended more towards the products?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's, the product line is just a way for us to scale so much more and be able to affect people's lives because we ship all over the world. So now we're 100% e-commerce company, and I'm still a practicing esthetician a little bit. I take some high profile clients out in LA. So I'll go out there. Well, pre-COVID, I'd be out there like every 6 to 8 weeks for a handful of clients, but now I don't go out there as much with COVID. But yeah, so we're 100% e-commerce company here in Austin, and I own 100% of the company as well.
Awesome. So you said you went to school in Boston, is that correct? Mm-hmm. What brought you to Texas, and why start the company in Austin?
Well, what brought me, the draw to Dallas was there was a little known NFL quarterback named Troy Aikman that I had a huge mad crush on. And I was like, well, I want to marry Troy Aikman. And if I'm going to marry Troy Aikman, he's in Dallas, that would make life a lot easier. And so that's why I came.
That is hilarious.
And I mean, like, I could say to you, I'm joking, but really I'm not.
I can tell that you're serious.
No, it's a thing.
Did you make any extra effort to like maybe find out what bars he frequents and run into him on accident or anything like that?
Oh yes. Oh yes. I actually went one time. Fast forward, many years later, Troy actually would become my facial client, and I have never told Troy any of this and still haven't. But one time I went to his, he had like his Troy Aikman Foundation or something, and I like dressed up like kind of like really professional in like a suit. I remember I had like a briefcase, and I managed to get through security at the office. It was his office was out near the old Ranger Stadium in Dallas, and I managed to like get through security. I was like, oh yeah, I have a meeting with Mr. Aikman. I act all professional, and somehow they let me in. And so I went up to his office, and my heart was racing, and I go to the door, and it says like Troy Aikman Foundation, and I knocked on the door, and I had a plan, which was I had a card just in case he was there, and I was because I was actually in town. I hadn't moved yet. I was still in town, like looking at locations for my business. And so I had a card, and just in case he wasn't there. So I walk in, and his, receptionist was there, and I was like, oh, is Troy here? And she's like, oh no, he just left like 15 minutes ago. My heart dropped. So I said, would you mind giving him this card? And the card And the card, basically, I put a little picture of myself and I introduced myself, and I just said, hey, I'm coming to Dallas. I don't know anyone. I'm starting a business here. And I gave him my pager number because this is back in the day of pagers. And so she said, oh yeah, he'll be back this afternoon. I'll leave it at his desk. And so like for the next couple of days, every time my pager went off, like on my hip, my belt or wherever one had a pager back then. Mm-hmm. And every time it went off, I was like, oh my gosh, this is Troy. And needless to say, never heard from Troy.
Oh my God. So, okay. So you never ended up meeting him. I love that story though.
No, not then.
Not
years
then,
later.
But he did become a client,
He did become a client.
Did you know how, not as a result of that card you left, or just other coincidence?
No, it was years later. Actually, he called and wanted somebody to take care of his skin, and he heard I was the best in Dallas, and so made an appointment.
It's interesting. I was curious how many men you get. I'm sure it's way more women, right? But there are some men that, I would assume it's people that have more money and stuff like that. If
probably, or have problems with their skin, right? I mean, if somebody is having a lot of acne or adult acne, then people want clear skin. So it doesn't matter whether it's a guy or a girl. But yeah, I mean, predominantly our business is both when I had the services side of the business, as well as certainly now with the products, it's predominantly women. But, men are just, they're curious. They want to learn more. They'll steal some of their wives' products, and they're kind of, they're curious about it, but they're not the market we really go after. Yeah.
So, I mean, that might be a good time to get a little bit into the actual treatments and stuff like that. So if someone comes to you and they want help, well, what is the process like?
So now that we're strictly an e-commerce company, so we sell exclusively D2C. So we're not in any retailers, and that's been a strategic choice by myself, meaning we don't have to do it because we're having the growth we want. And we've been in the e-commerce space for so long, so we're just staying there. So at this point, if somebody is like, hey, I want to start getting serious about my skin, what should I do? We offer virtual skin consultations. Pre-COVID, we offered them in our offices, but in our Austin office, but now we just do them via Zoom or Skype or FaceTime, whatever people have. And so people can basically talk to an esthetician via video, and it's free with $100 purchase of products, and they can get, talk to somebody and get their concerns talked out, and then they'll set them up with a routine. We also, my skincare line is unique in kind of the philosophy. It's based on 9 different skin types. And we have a skin type quiz at reneerouleau.com. So if somebody if they don't feel like they need to talk to somebody, they can just take the quiz, and then it's really fast and easy, and then it will put them into a routine.
Gotcha. So they take the quiz, they get into a routine. I was going to ask you this, what is the simplest thing someone can do even before buying products? Do you have any really easy low-hanging fruit type things people can do for their skin?
Yeah, I mean, I think it always goes back to the basics, which is washing your face morning and night, finding a cleanser, not using bar soap. That's a big one. Bar soaps are really drying. Certainly a lot of guys still grab for the bar soap. So I'm always trying to educate people about that. And the main reason is because the binders that hold a bar of soap together naturally have a high pH balance. And so they're higher than your skin's natural pH, and it puts it in an alkaline state, which is going to dry out the skin.
That makes sense. I have noticed the bar soap does dry your skin, but I didn't think about it too much.
Right.
Okay. Right. That's interesting to know why.
Yeah. You never want to have that tight feeling on the skin. I mean, your skin cells are like fish, and they need water to live. And so every time you're washing, you're just pulling all of that out. So wash with something gentle. And then moisturizing, right? I mean, again, to keep water in the skin cells, use a moisturizer. And then during the day, you want your moisturizer to have SPF in it. At night, you don't need a moisturizer. I mean, with SPF, but I think at the very, cleansing and moisturizing and daytime sunscreen, I think that's like very bare bones basics. And then certainly there's all sorts of bells and whistles from a product standpoint that you can add to your routine. When it comes to professional treatments, they're really good, and they can give you additional results, more problem solving things. But at the end of the day, it's kind of like a personal trainer. It's like you can work out with a personal trainer 3 times a week, but the minute you go home or you're you're there for an hour, and then all of a sudden, you're not treating your body, not treating your skin well, your body well, you're eating Burger King breakfast, lunch, and dinner. How much results is the trainer going to give you, right? So professional treatments are great as long as you've got kind of your solid foundation at home. So at home care is always where it begins.
Gotcha. I've always been curious about how much your skin is your genetics, or if it's like, does what I eat really matter,
Right.
or is it mostly genetic?
Great question. So genetics certainly plays a role. We know that. I think I think they really say something like, I'd have to look up the number, but I want to say something like genetics is in the way that your skin ages. So from an aging standpoint, so wrinkles and that sort of thing, genetics plays only like a 20% part in that. Really, it is lifestyle. So, a lot of times people, they just think they have no say in the matter of how their skin's going to age or whatever, but you really do. When it comes to things like food, it does not have as much of a factor as people think, right? And
as far as like acne goes, I was thinking more acne, not wrinkles.
Yeah, right. Well, yeah, for acne, I mean, I mean, yes, for sure. I mean, there's certain foods like dairy could be problematic if people get like cystic acne around the chin and jawline, but other than that, dairy is really the only one that is a little more black and white that, when people have dairy, it will break them out. But otherwise, there's not, maybe, some people could be a little reactive to sugar, but no, it's not. I mean, the old wives' tale is like, oh, my teenage son, he just eats French fries and pizza all the time. And I know that's what's causing his acne. And it's like, no, it's a little more complicated than that. And so it does have a genetic predisposition, but I work, we kind of specialize a little bit in acne, and I have, so many people that eat really well and super clean and have acne. And then certainly there's plenty of people who eat poorly and have great skin. So it's not, diet does not play into it as much as we've been led to believe.
Mm-hmm. Which is kind of unfortunate because you want it to, so then you have control over it, right?
No, you're absolutely right. And that's what I always try to educate people. I'm like, everyone wants the answer. Like, especially when it comes to acne, they're like, well, I think it might be from like my cell phone and, when I'm talking and I don't wash it enough, or, and I'm just like, if only it was that simple. Like, the reality is this: acne is a disease of the skin for which there is no known cure. There isn't, right?
It's just treatment.
Well, right. There's treatment, and a lot of treatments are a little bit hit or miss, unfortunately, because we just don't know the cure to it yet. So trust me, if there was a cure for acne, we would all know about it. No one would ever break out again. We would know about it, and people still break out. Now, obviously, there's like prescription Accutane, which is very intense, and that
I never tried that. I have friends that have. Do you have an opinion on that?
I do. I have a great blog post on it, but I always feel like that should be the last option because it is pretty strong, and it's, there's a lot of supervision from a doctor you have to to go through to get on it. It definitely works. It shuts down your oil glands, and oil is the ultimate derivative of breakouts. And so if you're not producing oil, you can't breathe that bacteria and cause breakouts. So it definitely works, but I think that sometimes people just want the magic pill and they kind of go there, they go there too quickly. And I just think that they should exhaust some options before they do that. But it definitely does work. A lot of my Hollywood clients, I have a lot of young Hollywood clients, and they're on HGTV, or is that what it's called? No, HD. What's it called?
Human growth hormone, maybe?
No. The cameras, what's that thing called? Where you see them close up and you can see everything on their face.
Oh, when they're just like on, literally on 4K television.
Yeah.
High definition television.
Yeah. HD. Okay. Yeah. Sorry. That's what I was thinking. So, you can, because of all the advancements in that.
That's funny. I'll stop right there and mention, I've had people like Bill Burr, he's a comedian. He jokes, he's like, the definition's too good. Like you can see like the holes in everyone's face.
Exactly.
And when they remaster older movies, like they look super cheesy sometimes because you're not supposed to be able to see all this stuff. Yeah. Go on.
Yeah. So in real life. And so some of my young Hollywood clients, they kind of have no choice but to go on Accutane because they literally don't want any breakouts. And so that's that's what you have to do.
They want zero.
Yeah.
Can't they like cover that up with a little bit of makeup as long as it's like, or maybe...
Well, yes, they can, but what you have to understand is acne are bumps on the skin, right? So it's not just like a red spot, like it's actually a raised, infection in the skin, and you can't really cover that up. It's still raised.
Maybe more actors should just do movies with acne on their face to make people feel more normal.
Right. Yeah. Well, I would imagine that there is a lot more acceptance. Look on social media, there's all sorts of like acne positivity, Instagram accounts. So there's a lot more, I think, acceptance now. But, at the end of the day, everyone wants to look perfect, and they'll do what they do to, to get there. So
yeah, for sure. So I have a question for you. My girlfriend wants me to try facials. Do they work?
Yeah. Yeah, they definitely work. Yeah. That's what I've been doing for 30 plus years. It all depends on what your goals are. So I think who really needs them the most, if you're talking about a traditional facial, is people with acne and clogged pores, because you do a lot of manual extractions, you clean out those blocked pores. Because if you don't get those blocked pores cleaned out, then it's adding to more breakouts and that sort of thing. So clearing pores is really essential for preventing acne. Once you get into like, oh, I have, wrinkles and all of that, facials are certainly healthy for the skin, and they can really hydrate and keep the skin balanced. But then, people might want to look into, things like Botox or things like that are, a facial isn't going to get rid of wrinkles, but Botox can. So, yeah,
I know a lot of people are doing Botox, and my girlfriend's actually like, she feels like, I don't know if I should be saying this, but she feels like she needs to do it because all of her friends are doing it. I'm like,
right.
She keeps saying this. I'm like, I never said not to do it. Like, who are you talking to?
Yeah.
Like,
well, no. And that's a thing. Like I wrote a blog post about this, like, when is the right time to get Botox? Because everyone's having this kind of FOMO reaction, where it's like, oh, everyone's doing it. Like, I don't want to look like the old wrinkled one, like there's kind of this pressure, and especially on Instagram with all the filters and everyone looks flawless and perfect. So, I think it's such a personal decision, but the general rule is, and in my mind, is you get it when your face is at rest and you're starting, and you can see the wrinkles, right? So like when people like furrow and smile and go, oh, look at, you can see these. Well, you're supposed to when you smile, right? But once you're at rest and then they're really starting to show, I think that's a good time to do it. Now the argument could be made like, oh, well, prevention. But the reality is, you can get rid of them anytime with Botox. So it's like, you don't need to like do it too soon.
Kind
basically.
of, overly preventing.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And the nice thing about Botox is that it has been around for many, many years. It just wasn't FDA approved for wrinkles. So it's been used since like the early 70s, I believe, for in massive doses for people with Parkinson's disease and Tourette syndrome. So any kind of uncontrollable muscle movements. That's how it was originally used, to try to stop muscle movements.
Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. So then they said, well, hey, we want to stop muscle movement in the forehead or in between the eyebrows. And so it's used in very small doses. The only known side effect from all the years they were using it for, those other reasons, was that at some point people could build up an immunity to it and it wouldn't work anymore. But that's been the only known side effect. So I feel, because Botox is botulism. And when it first came out, everyone's like, you're injecting botulism into your face. And yeah, you are. But, it's been around for so many years. So it's not like it's a brand new thing. So
gotcha.
So I feel like it's safe.
Do you follow any anti-aging science or anything like that? Like Dr. David Sinclair is an author.
Oh, that's so funny. I heard him. I guess he was on maybe Joe Rogan's podcast. That's how I first heard of him. But
He's been on there before, yeah.
Okay, I just subscribed to his emails and I just started following him on Instagram. And I actually just started ordering one of his vitamins or something, some sort of supplement that I just started taking about a month ago. So yeah, I'm kind of intrigued by him, and I think he seems to be a solid researcher.
For sure. Yeah. I've been following his newsletter for a while, and anybody that is into anti-aging, like Aubrey de Grey is another one. I had a guest on here, Jim Donnelly, has a company called Restore Hyper Wellness, which they do a lot of cryotherapy.
Yeah, right.
And
I've been there before. Mm-hmm.
You've been there? Yeah. I really enjoyed talking to him, and I could tell he follows like anti-aging for sure, because that's kind of what the company is, like to keep you healthier longer. And when David Sinclair talks about lifespan, he's talking about like, it's not necessarily living longer, which yes, that's great, but it's like living well while you are alive.
Right.
Like your lifespan is different than, your actual end date. Your lifespan is like how long you feel healthy and stuff like that.
Exactly. Yeah.
So interesting when it just comes into like, like Botox, like, keeping your face healthy, like anything that you can do to slow down the biological process of aging in combination with those things is helpful.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And a big one, a huge one is trying to limit your time in the sun. And because that changes the DNA of the cells. That's the ultimate destruction is sun exposure, certainly from a visible standpoint, but, wrinkles and brown spots, things like that, but also the free radical activity that sun induces, and that age, that changes cells and ages you. So I think that's something that people should be mindful of.
I feel like I ignored that one for too long. It's hard. I always tell people, it's like, well, when you're blonde and you're pale, like you look the same unless you have somewhat of a tan. So it's this conundrum of like, it's nice to have a little bit of a tan, but also it is skin damage, and over time it will add up.
Yeah. It's funny because so much of it is how you were raised. And what I mean by that is if you lived somewhere, like if you grew up in Florida, right, and you were at the beach all the time, like unfortunately, you were a kid, you were raised by your parents, and certainly, parents nowadays that have toddlers, now they know to put sunscreen on.
But they did
back
not
then,
know that before.
Right, they didn't know that back then. And so, and I consider, I'm 52 and I don't have a lot of sun damage, but part of it was because I mainly grew up in Minnesota and Wisconsin. So our summers were 2 months, and we didn't have, a beach. We didn't ever take beach vacations. And so my parents just weren't real, we didn't have a boat. We didn't have a lake, we had plenty of lakes, but we weren't out on a boat. So like, I just didn't get much sun growing up. And then when I got into high school, and so those are kind of the tanning years, right? When you're in high school and whatever. Well, I was always a little bit heavier. And the last thing I wanted to do is during those teenage awkward years is be in a bathing suit. So anytime everyone's like, oh yeah, we're all going to the beach, I'm like, no, thanks. And so I just, come to find out that would work. All of that, when I didn't know that the sun was bad, would work in my favor. So it's kind of nice.
Cool. Yeah. So, I thought that very same thing. A lot of it depends on how you're raised. And it's like, by the time you get the information, it might be a little too late.
Exactly.
But we went a lot into the skin stuff, which has been fun, but I wanted to go back a little bit to, when you introduced the business, we kind of covered a lot of ground really quickly right there. Why start your own business as opposed to, working for someone else? I
think what really inspires someone to start a business is they're working for someone else and they realize they can do it better, right? Like, and I think it's also a personality trait as well, freer thinkers, people that are a little more stubborn, people that, are know-it-alls. I think that's kind of the DNA of kind of what makes someone do it. And that type of personality, is also a personality that doesn't work well for other people, right? Like they always say entrepreneurs are kind of unemployable because they have their own vision and they want it done their way. And so I think I've just, I worked for somebody and just said, I can do this better. And that was kind of the inspiration, I think. And then also my grandmother owned her own business. So I know we've always been very independent and strong and just confident. And so I think that I had that in me as well.
That makes sense. So were there any times when you were going down that road can you think about any big challenges or parts where you kind of thought about giving up?
No, I just always knew that hard work was the answer. A lot of people, when people say like, oh, Renee, you've been in business for 25 years. What was it? I'm like, I worked my ass off. Like, it's work. It's work, putting in the hours, right? You can make anything happen when you put the hours in. And I think, Mark Cuban said it best, which is ideas are the easy part, execution's the hard part, right?
For sure.
There's no shortage of ideas, right?
Exactly.
But like I actually rolled up my sleeves and worked really hard. And part of that was I sacrificed a lot of, my life. Because I was working so much. But I also loved working. Like I love the wins, I love the highs that I get from the success. And people will say like, oh, how do you find work-life balance? I'm like, well, like, I don't really believe in that because at the end of the day, how I spend my days is what brings me joy. Like that's happiness. And if I get fulfillment out of my work, there's just not a lot of other things that bring me joy like my work does. So,
I totally agree with that perspective. Because it's kind of like two birds, one stone, right? It's like, yeah, you mentioned it's like, yeah, you're sacrificing, but at the same time, it's like, if that's what you enjoy doing, it's like, you're not really sacrificing that much because if it's entertaining you and you get enjoyment out of it, I'm sure, everybody has days where it's like, not, it's not all great. It's not all whatever, but that's part of that whole process.
Right. Well, it's like building something. There's nothing, I remember as a kid, like in whatever grade it was, they taught you how to like, you had like a little paper cup. And then, you'd put the dirt in there and then you'd put the the seed in there. And I remember as a kid, they taught us how to, whatever, they were in the windowsill of my third grade class or something, and you had your name written on the cup, and every day you would water it a little bit. And the most exciting thing was when all of a sudden something started to blossom and you were like, oh my God, this is amazing. And then you water a little more, and it just blossomed into this beautiful thing. And that's just so exciting, planting a seed, watering it, nurturing it, and watching it come alive. And that's what running a company, that's what a business is like. It goes just from one idea to here we are 25 years later, and I employ 19 people here in Austin. We got acknowledgement last year as a best company to work for by Austin Business Journal. And it's just like such a buzz. Like, it's so exciting. So
yeah, I mean, I look at it as kind of like one of the most rewarding things a person can do is kind of like build their own company, what I mean? And build their vision, and then, see how that affects other people, their customers, everything else. Yeah.
And I mean, the nice thing about, our business is like, I can't imagine, I always think about like, oh, what must be the worst job on the planet? And I'm like, having a company where they have like a call center or something, and all day long, all the employees are just getting yelled at with people being like, leave me alone, put me on the do not call list. Like, and I like to make people happy. And luckily I'm in a profession where we just make people happy. I mean, when people, send us emails and DM us, and they're just literally like, you have changed my life. Like, I used to have bad acne, and oh my gosh, I have all this confidence now. My skin's clear. I'm going to use your products for life. Like, we just make people happy. So that makes it nice as well.
For sure. Yeah, you can definitely set businesses up in a way to where the employees are like kind of like set up to fail. And there's a lot of businesses like that. Whenever I get phone calls like that, I'm never mad at the person. I'm mad at the person that set up the system in the way that is making us both go through this right now. And I'm like, how much money is this saving you? Like,
exactly. Oh my gosh. Awful. Yeah. But I also do realize so in our company, we do personality assessment, and there are certain personalities that can take it on the chin, meaning like, so when we hire for customer care, like, naturally there will be people that will be upset. We sent a customer their order, got lost, right? And now they're annoyed, whatever. And there definitely are people that can not take those emotions home with them, right? So customer can yell at them and they can just be very unemotional about it. So we always have tried to hire for people that can kind of handle that, because for me, I'd be like, wouldn't be able to sleep at night knowing I upset somebody, but other people can just let it roll off.
Yeah, because they know that it's not about them at all. It's about the day that person had, and this is one thing that they ended up like, I don't know, getting mad at someone on the phone about, and really it's about something entirely different.
Exactly. Yeah, true.
I kind of want to ask you about marketing a bit.
Okay.
Obviously I can see that you do a lot of marketing through, you've got your website and you do blog. It seems like you're doing all the main things. Like, is that what's been the most effective for you? Like doing all basically the guerrilla type stuff, blogging, going on podcasts, et cetera? Is there something else you're doing that's working well when it comes to marketing?
It's interesting because if I started my company today, like, I don't even know how I would make it. Like, it's just, the landscape is just so different now, super competitive. There's so many skincare companies. Every celebrity now has a skincare line. There's just a lot of competition. And I wouldn't even know what I would do today, because today you're also at the mercy of the algorithms of the world, right? Like, SEO, and certainly the algorithms on social media, and there's not a lot of control you can have. And so for me, going way back when I started my company, I started a blog I started the blog maybe like 6 years in or something, but it was before WordPress was around. So these were just like called like articles on our website. And so I was pushing out content early on because I always thought of myself as an educator. I never wanted to be one of those salespeople that just said, oh, you have a problem, use this product. I wanted to be able to sell a product, but also say, hey, but I have all this other great information for you that is free, and whatever.
And it turns out that's a really great model for building trust between customers.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Trust. That's my company's based on trust. And so I started creating these skincare articles, and then eventually got onto WordPress platform, and then called it a blog, because that was like 2009. And that's when the word was invented or whatever. And yeah, fast forward to now, 2021, and we're still pushing out all this blog content. So I was a content producer way back when no one was. And so Google recognized us as pushing content out there. So they just gave us, there were no other authorities out there that were doing consistent skincare information. So we got so much organic traffic. I mean, every day it just was raining with referral traffic, and never had to pay a dime for any, paid PP. What's it called?
I don't know, just like the paid rankings
paid
in
search,
the search
and all that. Yeah.
I don't even know when they started that. I mean, there was a time when there wasn't even paid search.
Right. For sure. Yeah. I was back on, certainly when there wasn't. And so the party kind of ended about like maybe 4 years ago when Google changed their algorithm. And I think what happened was, now a lot of people are selling snake oil, and there's not a lot, then all of a sudden people are, the old expression, can you believe everything, that you read on the internet or whatever. And so now they really focused on authority. And so I got kind of pushed down in the rankings because they wanted people to be doctors, and I'm not a doctor. So that's when things kind of changed a little bit.
Gotcha.
And we have to kind of, we do some paid for some SEO stuff, or some, I don't even know what's called. My marketing director runs it. But the point is, we do pay a little bit now, but for many years we just had a free ride. And then one day the algorithm changed, and it's just like traffic just dropped like over, within 10 minutes. It was crazy. So anyway, but yeah, so I think, we built up that trust, and we've always been a content and commerce site. And, and I think also a big part of it is that I am a trusted authority. I'm actually, there's a lot of people that come out with skincare products now, but I'm like, hey, like I've been doing this for over 30 years, hands-on with skin. And ultimately it is about, trust. So I've built that with people, which is great.
I remember that algorithm update. Lots of people were really upset about that. I forget. I don't know if it was like the Panda update. There was a name. I mean,
it was some sort of like for your health or something. I thought it had the word health in it, but it was kind of medical. It kind of fell under the medical thing. But
yeah, but I mean, I can see why they did the update. And I mean, like you had a good site and you had good content, and there was a reason why people were going towards it. But unfortunately, because of so many bad actors,
exactly.
I had to just change the way things were done.
Yeah.
But it is unfortunate. Like everything is paid now. Like you can't really advertise without paying. Like,
well, I mean, how about the whole affiliate marketing thing? Right? Are you familiar with that, Justin?
Yeah. It's like when you have someone else post your products up on their blog or their whatever, and you give them a small cut.
Yeah, but it's also, and more so than that, it's media companies as well. Mm-hmm. So if you go to any media site, media also uses affiliates. So when you're reading, mensfitness.com or whatever, and they're saying, hey, these are the 10 best supplements to take or whatever, there's incentive for them to mention those because they're getting a cut of it. And so,
sure.
So then it's just like, well, wait, who are they only mentioning these products because they're getting a cut, or because not every brand signs up for affiliate marketing. So if you don't sign up for that opportunity, are they going to talk about you? Maybe, maybe not.
Yeah, organic is kind of dead, isn't it? Like, I don't know how you could do organic anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure some people pull it off somehow in some weird way. I don't know if they either get lucky or just, I don't know, they somehow become viral or whatever it is. But
yeah.
Man, everything's too. I mean, Instagram only shows you so many people like that you're even following. You
exactly.
know what I mean? And they actively push people out until you pay money then to get those people. You know what I mean? So Facebook, same way.
Yeah. And the one thing that has worked really well, which we really put a lot of energy into, is email marketing, because you do have control over that, right? Like your job is just to try to get as many emails as possible, but people love our emails. They're super educational, and we continue to build our email list, and we do very, very well with that. But that is one that we have more control over because it's not based on an algorithm.
Yeah, I feel like everyone I talk to is like, they always mention like just old school email marketing, mailing lists. People are always saying like just to have a mailing list, send people emails, because you can get there are filters and stuff, but you can, if people are liking what you're putting in their inbox, then
they'll see it.
Still get
absolutely.
To them.
Yeah.
I was going to ask you, you have this product line that you've had developed over many years. Is that like personal study? Did that start with like personal study? Did you consult some scientists? How have the products been formulated, and maybe how has that changed over the years?
So the concept behind my line, I'll start there. So when I went to school to become an esthetician, I learned about skin types. And skin types, you learned about dry, normal, and oily. Those were the 3 skin types. So I get out into the world, and now I'm actually taking clients, and all of a sudden I'm working with clients, and I'm looking at their skin and working at their skin. And I'm like, oh, wait a minute. Like, your skin has a little more going on than just dry, normal, and oily. And skincare lines back then, and still to this day, a fair amount, but they're still kind of catered to those very generic skin types, dry, normal, and oily. Well, case in point, what if you have somebody who's 35 years old and now they're showing signs of, aging, but they also have some breakouts? And what skin type is that? Like, you can't, if somebody has breakouts as an adult, you don't want to all of a sudden put them on all these drying acne products that you might give to a teenager when they're really oily, but an adult doesn't need that. They're also, you need to kind of keep moisture in the skin because the skin's getting older or whatever. So that's like one example of where like dry, normal, and oily just doesn't work. So I started a line and I created it based on these 9 different skin types. And so again, I mentioned, I have the quiz, but our line is 50 products. So what I did was in the early days, I actually had my first skincare salon was up in Boston, and I had that for 5 years. And so back then, we had a private label company that we worked with, where literally you had the bottle of the cleanser, had the name on it, the ingredients, everything, and you just literally put your logo label on it. And that's what we did. That was called private label. So, but the problem there was somebody, 5 miles down the street could have the same exact product with their sticker on it. So, I mean, it was literally just a sticker on it with your name. And so that's how it kind of started. But then, when I started Renée Rouleau, I didn't want to just be putting a label on something. So then I started creating my own line, custom formulations. The challenge with custom formulations is that they have minimums, and nowadays it's, people will work with smaller independent brands because there's so many popping up. But back then, you might go to a lab that makes for, some huge company, and you're like, oh, will you make me a cleanser? And they're like, yeah, minimum quantity is 25,000. And you're like, okay, well, I can't do that. So
the upfront capital you need just to get your brand off the ground. Then also, what if you don't like that formulation?
Right. Or what if, what if the consumers don't, or you're not able to market it enough, and now you're sitting on inventory with product going old, and you can't have that. So I luckily was able to find some smaller labs that would work with me. So the process, I have, even though I didn't go to college, I have taken quite a few cosmetic chemistry courses at UCLA. They have their extension program. So I've taken through the years many cosmetic chemistry courses. They're like 5-day courses. So I know enough about cosmetic chemistry to communicate with a chemist. So it's really a conversation that I have with a chemist. This is what I want. These are the type of ingredients that I'm thinking about. This is the viscosity. This is what I wanted to do. And then it's a back and forth conversation, and then they make samples and we kind of go back and forth. So ultimately, I have the vision, and they're the ones that, makes the recipe, and then I test it and go through a whole testing thing, and it's just a back and forth thing. So I'm very well versed in that world, and I know a lot about ingredients and how products are made and that sort of thing.
Interesting. So that's interesting. So you kind of, as you said, you have your own vision for what you want the product to be like, even from kind of like how it feels in your hand and what it looks like.
Absolutely.
And it's not all about like how it works. Of course, it's how effective it is, but it's like, how does it feel? How does it look? Stuff like that. Make it good for
aesthetics
the
is a big part of that. I mean, if you, anytime if, you show someone a product, the first thing they do is they open up and they smell it. Right. So that scent is a whole nother, magic, in itself.
Seems like a rabbit hole you could go really far down into and spend a lot of money, depending on like how particular you wanted to get. And then like, I don't know how many types with all these different types of skin types and formulating them in certain ways, but
it's definitely a science.
You're pretty happy with how your products have been formulated to this point. Do you refine them still, or have you kind of found how you want them to be?
A lot of times I'll go back to a formula we've had for a long time and make a new and improved, just because advancements have been made in ingredients. So, maybe every, I don't know, maybe I can't really put a number to it, but let's just say every 5 to 10 years or something, I might update something. It just depends on the product. But what's actually happening now I call it a post-pandemic world, even though it's not really post-pandemic anymore, but there's so many, I think a lot of labs, they spent the downtime during the quarantine really looking at their business processes and whatnot. And so they've discontinued a lot of ingredients because, they're trying to cut costs and that sort of thing. And or their suppliers also discontinued ingredients. So it's having a trickle down effect. So all of a sudden, the lab will reach out and they're like, hey, we just want to let you know that, they no longer make that ingredient anymore.
The supply chain issues are everywhere.
Everywhere. So now, I'm in the process of having to reformulate some things. Not that I wanted to, but my hands are tied. I have to. So,
Gotcha.
So it's been a little challenging right now.
Has the chemistry around it gotten better since you had started? Have you seen advancements there or not really?
Honestly, like people would skincare is so popular now that the theory is that like there have been so many advancements, and there have for sure, but not as much as you would think. Like I actually just went 2 months ago up to Boston to the aesthetic school that I went to 30 years ago. And I went back for the first time and visited it, and they have their own skincare line. And, when you look at they had it in their, like they had a glass cabinet with like all the old products from when the school started in the 60s. And so I'm looking at this old packaging they had from way back when, like they had this cream called the O cream that Jackie Onassis used to use and blah, blah, blah. But I'm looking at the ingredients and it's like, wow, like it hasn't changed that much. This is, a few of the ingredients are a little old school, but for the most part, hasn't changed that much.
Gotcha. Hey, FIA listeners. Just before this episode is over, I want to give you one more quick friendly reminder to please like and subscribe to the podcast on your favorite podcast player. Thanks again. I was looking around on your website on the About Me page, and I saw something about like was it a 1,000 person motorcycle ride? 1,500 called Babes Ride Out.
All girls, 1,500 motorcyclists from around the U.S.
So can you tell me what that's all about? And you ride motorcycles regularly, or is this a one-time thing, or what?
Yes, I ride them regularly. I've been riding for probably close to 20 years. My now late husband, he used to ride motorcycles and I used to ride on the back of his, and then he kicked me off and said, get your own. And he was also a French guy who was 5'6". So I was little, and I'm almost 5'9". So I was kind of a little top heavy anyway. So I got my license and then have been riding ever since. We've ridden all over the world. So a lot of times when we would travel internationally, we go rent motorcycles and do a day trip. And so we've ridden Cape Town and Greece and Bali and all sorts of places. So now I still continue to ride. In Austin, there's a company called Revival Cycles, and they actually made me a custom motorcycle that I got back about 1.5 years ago. It's a Triumph Bobber. But yeah, I love to ride motorcycles. I actually just went out with about 8 girls about a week ago. And normally I ride with a lot of my guy friends, but I happened to find these girls that ride. And so we rode together, which is fun. But yeah, so this Babes Ride Out was about 2 years ago, and it was in Northern California, and it was just a weekend of camping and motorcycle activities and riding, but it was for all females. It was super fun.
Sounds fun, especially camping and riding. That's cool.
Yeah.
How was the weather while you were out there? Was it hot at night or what?
Well, speaking of the camping part, I ended up so I had a tent but I was in the tent all by myself, and it ended up getting down to 20 degrees at night, and I was freezing. And so finally, 1 a.m, I'm like, I'm out of here. And so I went and booked and stayed in a hotel.
You didn't bring a Sub-Zero sleeping bag.
No, I didn't prepare enough. And I just didn't think it was, and I was just like, this is miserable. So I ended up, there was a little Holiday Inn Express that wasn't far. And so I ended up staying there and for 2 nights in a row and kind of ditched the tent thing. But yeah, so it was super fun, but it's just super empowering to be around all these other girl moto riders.
Mm-hmm. That sounds cool.
So cool.
Yeah, and a good camping experience. You learned some stuff about camping there too. So I saw that also you went on a 110-mile hike. What was this hike all about? And I mean, it must have took multiple days, right? And you camped.
Yeah, I did. A couple years ago, I did went to Spain and did the El Camino de Santiago trek, which is a pilgrimage that has been, been happening for 1 million years from people. It was a pilgrimage for I don't know the history of it, but basically people have taken this walk forever. And so I went with a group, and then I kind of went off on my own for most of the trip, and I spread my husband's ashes along the way, which was really beautiful. But yeah, so it was a 110-mile journey, and they have youth hostels along the way, and you just stay in youth hostels and just keep going down this pilgrimage for 110 miles.
Makes sense. What's a youth hostel?
So it's you don't know what the youth hostel is?
No.
Or a hostel?
Know what a hostel is? I don't know.
I guess same thing. Sorry,
Okay.
I guess I think of youth hostel since like I guess that's what they used to be called. But yeah, hostels.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
I've never done the hostel thing.
You need to go to Native here in Austin because that's a hostel.
Yeah, but that's not like
no, it's trust me, it's my kind of hostel. It's like super nice, and I stayed there one night. I was like, I want to stay in a hostel. Yeah, it's nice. I mean, obviously their business model has now changed since COVID. I don't.
Yeah, it's like mostly a bar now. And like a bar and a live music type.
Yeah,
thing.
and then they rent. I think what used to be the rooms. I think that's like it's almost like a WeWork thing where they rent. People do well. I think they have a tattoo artist now. They think about so they rent spaces now.
Gotcha. That's cool. Yeah, I've seen friends' Instagram videos being there. I haven't been to check it out yet. And CK Chen was on the podcast and talked about it.
Yeah, he's part of it.
Yeah. Cool. Well, the hike sounds fun. That's a lot. What are your favorite? I like to ask people sometimes what their favorite things to do in Austin are. Maybe their favorite. I mean, you just mentioned Native Hostel. I don't know if you go there or not, but like, where's a place someone might catch you out at randomly?
So I love the White Horse. I love
really?
two-stepping at the,
Okay.
I actually live on the east side, so it's super close to me. So,
do you also go to the Broken Spoke or mostly White Horse?
No.
Okay.
Because Broken Spoke it's like, it just feels so much more touristy. Not to say tourists don't go to the White Horse, but everybody knows the Broken Spoke. So White Horse is a little more authentic, I feel like. My favorite bar in Austin is Here Nor There, which is a speakeasy at 7th and Brazos. It's a members only speakeasy, so you can find me there. I'm also a member of the new Soho House that just opened here in Austin.
I've been to the Soho House in Miami, met up with girlfriend's friends, had a membership there. It was great. It was a great beach experience because like you get the membership thing, and then of course we were guests, so like it's just so easy to go to the beach and like have a towel and like have all the stuff. Where normally, like, I mean, imagine just walking on the beach and you already have a little cabana thing and you have an umbrella.
Yeah.
You don't have to haul your stuff and get sand everywhere.
Yeah.
I thought that was really cool, but I was like, they're opening one in Austin. I was like, we don't even have beaches here though. Like, I was like, it's a cool business model. I bet it will be cool. I may check it out.
Yeah.
But wait, so it is open. The Soho House in Austin is now open and you're already a member?
Yeah, I'm actually on the committee, as a matter of fact.
Okay, so is it? I mean, you're going to be biased. I guess it's worth going to, even though it's not like Miami or whatever.
Yeah,
I mean,
they have a pool and they have a lot of events there. So they have like a music room. So so they're kind of getting going. They're kind of new to being open, but it's a restaurant and all of that. But yeah, I've seen a couple live performances there, and actually I went one night. Leon Bridges was there, and he just did a very small, intimate. Listening party, and then they'll have movie screening premieres and wellness events, and I mean all sorts of things. So there's a lot of activities.
I find it a very interesting business model. I mean, at first it's kind of like the kind of thing you hear about, and it's slightly offending. It's like, oh, you pay to get in, and then you pay to like you still have to pay for food and all this other stuff, but everything is so packed nowadays. Like everywhere you go in the major cities, it's hard to like. That's part of the reason I hardly like going out anymore is because I don't like big crowds. I like to go out and hang with my friends, but it's like. I like to have a seat and be able to enjoy the place. You know what I mean? But now you can't really do that. That's cool. Yeah. I'm going to give it a try. You like it?
Yeah. No, it's great. Yeah. It's super chill, but it's members only. So like you don't ever have to wait in line. I mean, it's just, and you get to know everyone. It's like a community. It's great.
Yeah. And that's what I was saying before we had some problems here. I mean, it sucks to have to pay a membership fee, but also things are really busy. And it's kind of what you're paying for is like to not be so crowded and stuff like that.
Exactly.
But hey, Renee, this has been really good. Thank you so much for doing the podcast. Obviously, as a man, I'm not as into skin stuff as women would be typically, but I do find it all very interesting. And I mean, it's a good thing to think about and to take care of.
Yeah.
And I enjoyed your story and a lot of the insights that you provided. So thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. Thanks, Justin.